Hello, welcome to the show. Welcome to Not Just Nintendo, a video game podcast that is about Nintendo. But it's not just Nintendo here at Not Just Nintendo, as I talk about other video game companies as well. Of course, the big news this week is that when you're watching this, there is only a single day until Donkey Kong Bonanza. Obviously, I am very excited for Donkey Kong Bonanza. As far as I'm concerned, that is the real launch title for the Switch 2. None of this Mario Kart World nonsense. Uh, I'm sure I'll complain a little bit about Mario Kart World this week as well. It wouldn't be a show if I didn't. Also, this show, like I said, I'm probably going to talk a little bit more about Donkey Kong Bonanza, a little bit more about the potential of Nintendo Directs coming up soon. I beat 3 different games that I'll talk about a little bit each, and I also played a significant amount of another game that I haven't yet beat, but I have quite a bit to say about it, so I'll talk about that as well. And then, of course, we'll just get into the regular news and stuff, and that'll be good for the show. But I imagine this will be a normal length show, unlike last time. Last time it was a little short. I did also put out the top 50 video games of all time. I put that in the podcast feed. It's been on YouTube now for like a week. Actually, it's been a week and a half, but I put it out on the podcast feed also last week, so you can watch it there too, or listen to it there, I guess, if that's your preference. Of course, I'm still editing some videos. I'm hoping to get a video out on the main channel next week. That's the plan. Probably not going to be one this Friday, but maybe next week I can get one. Of course, I'm probably going to be playing a lot of Donkey Kong Bonanza, though, so we'll see what happens. No promises. I might be live streaming some stuff, too. We'll see. No promises once again. I also need to finish up this Minecraft channel video because I've been talking about that for a long time and I still haven't got around to it. So there's a lot I've got to do, and that's just how I roll. But let's talk about some games I've beaten. So I've actually beaten 3 games in the last week. Of course, right before the last show, I beat Splatoon right in the morning, and I talked about that on the last show. That was actually like the primary thing I talked about last show. But just the next day, on July 10th, I beat, drum roll please, everybody, it's a big one. It's a big one, please. You got to give the drum roll. Mario Kart World. Oh boy, it's the final boss of me in video games. I always have something negative to say about Mario Kart World. And of course, I've got more to say today about Mario Kart World. So, just to clarify, I did all of the Grand Prix and all of the Knockout Tours on all of the CCs. So that's Grand Prix on 50, 100, and 150. That's Knockout Tours on 50, 100, and 150. I did all of those. I figured, that constitutes for beating the game as far as I'm concerned. They do give you credits after doing each Grand Prix. Like, so you'll do each Grand Prix on 50, you get credits. You do each Grand Prix on 100, you get credits again. Do each Grand Prix on 150, you get credits again. But I don't think you get credits at all for doing Knockout Tour. So apparently that's, I don't know. Who cares, honestly? It doesn't even matter. For me, I was like, okay, I need to do all the Knockout Tours, all the Grand Prix on every CC, and that'll be beating the game. It's one of those things. I feel like in recent times, the Mario Kart games, they've gotten a little bit of a reputation for being easier now than they were back in the day. And I will be talking about another one here later to kind of compare and contrast. But I actually found Mario Kart World, especially on 150cc, I honestly thought it might have been a little tougher than some of the old Mario Kart games. I mean, of course, the kart itself controls much better. The game controls much better. It's much easier to actually to get around and to know what you're doing. And so on some level, it's easier. But maybe I'm just crazy, but I felt like, I think it's because there were 24 people, I feel like I was just constantly getting bombarded with items. I spent almost 3 hours trying to do one knockout tour. Because every time we would be coming up on the end, I'll have been in first place basically the entire race, right? And here's the problem with the Knockout Tour. If you don't get the gold on Knockout Tour, you've got to do it again, right? But it literally takes like 12, 15 minutes sometimes. Like, those Knockout Tours are long. And it doesn't matter what CC you're on, they're long. Like, they are very long. It's like almost more of an endurance race, which I guess is neat to some regard, but it gets pretty annoying sometimes, when, like, this is what was happening to me. It was on the Shell Cup, I think it was. And so I would, right at the beginning of the race, pretty much, within 30 seconds in the first lap of the lap, I guess, if that's what you want to call it, of the 6, I would get up to first place. And then I would go the entire race pretty much undisturbed. It's not that hard, I would stay in first place basically the whole time. But then right at the end, I'd be coming up on the finish line. I could see the finish line. and then there would be an item box towards the end of the race, and I would just get bombarded with every item in the game. Like, it's insane sometimes. You'd get bombarded with, like, shell after shell after shell after, a bomb after hammer after boomerang, like, everything. Everything would get you right at the end, and I found, like, I literally spent hours like this, where I would be first place the entire race and then lose right at the end, and I'd still get, like, second, but it doesn't matter because you've got to get first. So I found that excruciating, to be honest, excruciating. And so I think Mario Kart is a game that should have fewer racers. I know maybe this isn't like a common opinion, but I feel like 24 racers is just too much. You know, like, I'm not a big F-Zero fan. I'm not sure if that's why, but I'm sure it doesn't help. But yeah, Mario Kart, it's got too many racers now. There's too much going on. So I don't know. I think that's part of my problem with the game. There's too much going on. But at the same time, I don't feel like I don't feel any reason to do the open world stuff. The open world stuff is fine if you want to do it. Go right ahead. But if you've got a lot of games you want to play, then don't even bother. Like, it's really not that. Um, it's not that inviting. Like, it's like, what are we're supposed to do? I don't know. So, the open world, not a huge fan of. I've talked about this before. I really don't want to dwell on this for the whole show and complain about Mario Kart World, but I will probably still anyways. Open world, not super into the open world. I will say, though, doing the Grand Prix, doing the knockout tours, it's fun. It's fun. And I'm glad there's a lot of content in the game. I'll say this is the Mario Kart game with the most content. I don't think anyone's going to argue that. I do think other ones aren't that far off, like DS, maybe with the mission mode. I feel like that has a lot of content too. You can definitely beat it quicker, but I still feel like it feels like it has a lot of content. And that's actually my next one I'm going to tackle, so I'll talk about that later. But, it just, Mario Kart World for me, I knew it wasn't going to be my game. Like, deep down, I knew. I was like, this isn't going to be my thing. Because I'm not a Mario Kart guy. I'm really not. I'm just not that big a fan. It's fine. It's fine. But I'm not big on multiplayer. I'm not big on online stuff. And I know, there is single player in Mario Kart, technically, right? You do the Grand Prix. And so I usually do that, right? I've been going through all the Mario Kart games, trying to beat all the Grand Prix and stuff. And so I was happy that there was the Knockout Tour and stuff. But I felt like this game promised a lot more when we first saw it. And, well, maybe not when we first saw it in January, but when we saw it in April, I feel like it was a big promise here. Like, there was a lot going on, a lot of open world stuff. It seemed like, right? Because we really didn't get much footage. We got a couple minutes. It looked like there was a lot going on. But then when they did the Mario Kart World Focus Direct, like only like a week or two before the thing came out, I got a little concerned because I saw it and I was like, this doesn't look like there's as much going on as we thought. And sure enough, there's really not. So, and if you love Mario Kart World, I'm happy for you. And I know for some people it's going to be their game. A lot of people just like Mario Kart. A lot of people like open worlds just for the sake of open worlds. A lot of people, but I'm not one of those people. So for me, Mario Kart World's not my game. That said, it's a good game. It's a good game. It's good, right? If you don't do the open world, I think if I did the open world stuff, I'd hate it, right? But I think, and I might come back at some point. I'm considering coming back at some point, maybe over time, I'll be in between games. I'll be like, I'm going to go play a couple hours and roam around the world or something if there's a podcast episode I want to listen to or something, right? But it's not something that I'm intending to, like, keep going and get everything. I might do a little bit, but I'm definitely not going to 100% this thing. If I do, it'll be like 7 or 8 years from now, you know. I guess there is a world in which I could really seriously come back to it, and that's if they do a DLC or they make it, more approachable. There's like a checklist for all the P-switches, or there's like some sort of map with the P-switches. If they did something like that, I could see myself coming back. I still don't know if I'd get them all, but I'd, think about it. I guess it was kind of the same problem I had with like Mario Odyssey, right? These are two games that, well, pretty much everybody loved Odyssey, but I think over time some people have started to see some flaws in Odyssey. It's not quite as well remembered as it was when it first came out, but it's still definitely high up there for a lot of people. And then Mario Kart World's obviously controversial already, so I imagine over time the reception's also gonna go down. That's how it tends to be, right? Reception of games tends to decrease over time, but there are some examples where it goes up. And so, that's kind of my problem with Odyssey too, especially with, the old 3D Mario games. They felt so replayable. You could get everything. I feel like the game was designed for you to get everything. Every 3D Mario game, I feel like they intended you to get all 120 stars or whatever there are, like 242 in Galaxy, whatever it is. I felt like they wanted you to get everything. That was the whole idea. They designed the game to get everything, and then they're like, you know what? There's going to be some people that don't want to do it, so we'll allow them to beat it with, 2/3 of the things, right? But the designers, it really did feel like they wanted you to get everything. In 64, I don't feel like you've played the full game if you've only gotten 70 stars, you know? And so but Odyssey doesn't feel like that. Odyssey, it feels like it was designed for you to get the bare bones amount of moon, the absolute minimum you needed. And then if you were bored, maybe you could get a few more, right? But it really doesn't feel like it's as well designed to. It's just, I don't know if it's worse designed. I think it's worse designed. But maybe it isn't. Maybe I'm just, so used to every other 3D Mario game being a different way. And so Odyssey is such a step away from the other 3D Mario games, I feel. But I know not everybody feels like that, and I feel like Mario Kart World feels like a similar problem, except obviously the difference is Mario Kart, there was no open world Mario Kart before Mario Kart World. But it feels like in both cases there's a lot of collectibles that I just don't feel rewarded for getting, and they just feel extraneous. I mean, I guess literally they are extraneous in both instances. In Mario Kart World, you literally need 0 P-switches. In Mario Odyssey, you do need some moons, but you don't need anywhere near the amount they allow you to get. So, I guess, to complain about both these two games that I have controversial opinions of, might as well tie in Breath of the Wild as well in here, right? But yeah, Mario Kart World, like I said, I might come back at some point, do a little bit of open world stuff, not a ton, but I might do a little bit here and there. If I do, I might talk about it again. I'm hoping we get DLC for it. I'm hoping we get all this stuff for it. If we do, I'll probably check that out, but I can't imagine I'll like be over the moon, like, oh my gosh, this is like the most basic thing. So that's Mario Kart World for you. It's I know there might have been some people watching my top 50 like, oh man, you can't get all these other games in there. Don't worry, guys. Mario Kart World would not have been on there. I guess Splatoon might have. Splatoon might have been on there, to be fair. I'm trying to think, was there anything else after I made the video? I mean, Sonic Generations, probably not. It's a pretty good game. But then, yeah, Splatoon probably would have been on there. So that was Mario Kart World. I spent about 19 hours, 15 minutes total, which I think is a little slow because I was struggling quite a bit at the end there with the 150cc knockout tours. Alright, so I beat Splatoon on the 9th, Mario Kart World on the 10th, but then on the 11th, 3 days in a row I beat a game. On the 11th, I beat Shadow Generations. So, of course, I beat Sonic Generations towards the end of last month. It was one of the games I got, like, pretty quickly after the Switch 2 dropped. When the Switch 2 dropped, I know I've talked about this before, I got Mario Kart World in the mail that same day. But I also went to the store while it was not arrived yet. So, I got home, I guess I should clarify here. Got home from school, got surprised with the Switch 2. Went out to the store, went out to Walmart, actually, to look for games. I wanted to buy something, whether it was Yakuza or something. I wanted some other thing besides just Mario Kart World. Because, again, I knew at the start, I was like, I don't think Mario Kart World is going to be my thing. So, we went out to Walmart. They hadn't put their games out. We had to, like, walk through the whole, like, the service desk and find all this stuff. And they had them just taped up in boxes behind the counter. You could buy Switch 2s. You couldn't buy Switch games, though. It's like, okay, well, that's pretty stupid. If you bought a Switch 2 without Mario Kart World, you couldn't get it. And if you bought a Switch 2, then you get Mario Kart World and can't get anything else because they didn't bother putting their games out on the shelves. So we left Walmart. We went to Target because we've got one of those too. And of course, the whole problem is we don't have GameStop. If we had a GameStop where I live, we used to, but they closed it. If we still had a GameStop, problem solved, right? I'd just go to GameStop. They'd have all sorts of stuff, but Walmart doesn't always. So then we went to Target, and there, once again, they hadn't put all their games out. They had a couple. They had a lot of copies of Mario Kart World, a lot of Street Fighter 6s, but I don't really care about Street Fighter. They did have a couple copies of Bravely Default, so I bought the Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster, whatever it's called. I don't know. It's a long, long title. So I bought that game. Then I got home, and Mario Kart World had been delivered, so I had two. Then about a week later, I went to Walmart this time when they had finally put their games out. They still weren't displayed properly until literally last week, so it's been a whole month till they finally decided to display them on a proper shelf. But I bought Sonic X Shadow Generations. So I beat Sonic Generations earlier last month, and now I've beat Shadow Generations. There's a lot of similarities between Sonic and Shadow Generations. I've described this before. It's like a Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury situation, right? So Nintendo put out the Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury I guess it's like a just a port, right, of the Wii U game back in 2021. I've played 3D World on there, it's cool. But to kind of sweeten the deal, they added Bowser's Fury. And Bowser's Fury is like a whole new mode. It's an open world, little 3D Mario game. It's quite short. I think I 100% of the thing in about 5 hours last year, so it's not a very long thing, but it's fun, And honestly, in some ways, it's better than 3D World. But overall, I think 3D World takes it just because it's got more content, right? A lot more content. But anyway, my point is they added an extra little game, and I think this is basically the exact same thing with Sonic and Shadow Generations. So Shadow Generations, similarly to Bowser's Fury, is like a 3D open world thing where you can go around. I will say it's not open world in quite the same way. Like it has a world that is open, right? So I guess in a way it's kind of open world, but you can't do things in any order, so it doesn't really feel exactly open world. But I think it technically is, right? But you've got to do the levels in the right order. There's a lot of collectibles around in the world, and those are like really wasn't bothered doing them, to be honest. Like, I guess that was my thing here. I wasn't gonna do any of the extra stuff, right? Like, you can beat every level and you can get like a better rank on it, right? If you beat the level fast enough, you get like an S rank or an A rank or a B rank, whatever. I was finishing some of these levels with like D ranks, and I'm like, I just don't care, Like, I will say at the end they forced me to redo a couple levels because I had too low of a rank. To fight the final boss, which I found pretty annoying, but it wasn't a huge deal. But yeah, I think the level design in Shadow Generations is great. I think it's also great in Sonic Generations. But yeah, Shadow Generations is a nice little thing on top of Sonic Generations. And to be honest, I know some people didn't buy Sonic X Shadow Generations when it came out last year because they'd already played Sonic Generations. Honestly, I feel like Shadow Generations is enough to warrant buying the game again. Like, it really, Shadow Generations is pretty cool. I didn't love everything about it, but I did like the boss fights. I liked the spectacle. I liked the level design. The level design, I don't think it's quite there with like the Mario platformers or the Kirby or the Donkey Kong platformers. I like those ones better, right? I like the Nintendo platformers better, but or even like Rayman, right? Um, but it's still pretty good. It's still decent level design. The bosses were fun, and like I said, I think really you're there for the spectacle. You're there for the cinematics and stuff, and they don't disappoint. They are quite good. The voice acting is not, but who cares? Whatever. I like Super Mario Sunshine's my second favorite game of all time. All right, I don't care about voice acting. Uh, I guess Metroid Other M coming soon, right? But anyways, so Shadow Generations is a solid game. I beat it in about 6.5 hours. Mostly because I took like an entire hour trying to figure out how to get into a level because it was like up in the sky and I couldn't figure out how to get into it. So I literally wandered around for like almost a full hour not knowing what to do. And every time I tried to look up a long play or something, I couldn't find the right part. So, anyways, it was like a Super Metroid situation, right? But yeah, so I probably could have beat it quite a bit faster, but that's all right. 6.5 hours, still not a very long game. And yeah, I really don't have a ton more to say about Shadow Generations. I did enjoy the final boss. I don't think I have like specific like favorite levels or anything. I think Sonic Generations the levels stood out a little more to me. Whereas with Shadow Generations, I think the levels blurred together a little better, which maybe the level design's not as good. I don't know. But yeah, I think it was really a lot about the cinematics and stuff in Shadow Generations, and that's cool. Originally, I was paying attention to the story, but it's a Sonic the Hedgehog game, so at the end, I was just listening to a podcast and like not even paying attention during the cutscenes. But they look cool. They look cool, like cool cutscenes. I mean, even if you don't want to play the game, I'd say look it up and see what I'm talking about, because yeah, definitely there's some real spectacle to it. So it's impressive in a lot of ways, and I'm pretty happy to have it as a thing for the launch of the Switch too. Obviously, I'd be happier with a 3D Mario game, but you know what? We're getting 3D Donkey Kong tomorrow, so I guess I can deal with it. I say tomorrow. For me, it's Tuesday, but for you guys, it's tomorrow. For me, it's 2 days from now. But still, you get what I'm saying. All right, so I broke my streak though. I beat 3 games 3 days in a row, and then I took a couple days and didn't beat anything. And then on July 14th, I beat another game. That game being another Mario Kart game. I'm like flying through the Mario Kart games over here. That game being Mario Kart 64. So Mario Kart 64, I don't know. I think honestly Mario Kart World probably is the best Mario Kart game because I think the Grand Prix and the knockout tours are the most fun, and that well, obviously there are no other knockout tours in any other game. But personally, I think the Grand Prix are probably the most interesting of all the Grand Prix, and it's a solid Mario Kart game. I'm just not a big Mario Kart fan, and it's not quite the promise I was expecting. But not to complain about Mario Kart World too much. Going back to Mario Kart 64, it feels like here's my thing, Mario Kart 64. I actually kind of like the controls, it's very slippery. Mario Kart 64 is slippery, and it makes quite the challenge. Certain tracks, though, are absolutely infuriating. There's the, like, Yoshi Falls, or Yoshi whatever it is, like, where you can't see what place you're in. That one's really annoying. Um, I started Mario Kart 64 a few months ago, back in March, after I had beaten Super Circuit back in February. So I had played it, over time. I had beaten like the 50 CCs and stuff, and I hadn't beaten anything else. So I played this game in a few different stages. And then, of course, Mario Kart World came out, so I stopped and played that. But now, then I came back to it as soon as I beat Mario Kart World, and it was pretty fast. I beat it in about 4.5 hours total. Mario Kart 64, I think I actually prefer, of the first three games, because that's what I've played so far, are the first three Mario Karts, and the most recent, are the only ones I've beat. Um, every other game I haven't beat all the Grand Prix and stuff. So, of the first three, that being Super Mario Kart 64, and Mario Kart Super Circuit, I think Super Circuit's my favorite. It's also very easy. And then I think Mario Kart 64, I think I probably prefer it to Super Mario Kart, but I guess I could go back and forth a little bit. It obviously looks a lot better, it feels better to play, but there are some things I didn't necessarily like about it. Here's another interesting thing, because I don't really have much to say about this game. It's an old Mario Kart game. Most people have probably played it. Um, Here's what I'll say, though. So, a weird thing, I didn't exactly know when to be done with this game. Because in Super Mario Kart, I was done with the game after beating 50 and 100cc. Because what happens is in Super Mario Kart, you beat 50cc, you get credits. Or sorry, no, I think I'm getting this backwards. I think in Super Mario Kart, you don't get credits until you beat 100. So you beat 50, you beat 100, then you get credits. And in Super Mario Kart, I tried 150cc, and I couldn't do it. It was hard. I mean, I probably could have done it if I wasted a lot of time on it. But I was like, I've already beat the game. Why bother with 150cc? Then I played Super Circuit, and in Super Circuit, you get credits after each CC, or each Grand Prix, I should say. So you do 50cc, all the Grand Prix, you get credits. You do 100cc, all the Grand Prix, you get credits again, and then 150, you get credits again. So with Super Mario Kart, after 50, I was like, well, I guess I should keep going, because that's like, I haven't done much. So I did 100, and then I was like, you know what, I'm just going to try 150, and then 150 was super easy on Super Circuit, so I did it. Mario Kart 64 is weird again because rather than getting credits after each CC, and rather than getting credits after 50 and 100, you actually don't get credits until you do all of them. So you have to do 50, 100, and 150. So I had done 50, hadn't got credits, so I figured, okay, this game must be like Super Mario Kart rather than like Super Circuit. Then I did 100, and I'm like, okay, it's not like Super Circuit either. And so then I had to do 150. And I ran this by my dad because he played Mario Kart 64 a lot when he was younger. Um, I was like, when have I beat this game, right? Because I haven't got credits yet. But if it was like any of the other Mario Kart games, I would have. He's like, well, you got to do all CCs. I'm like, all right, fine, I'll do all CCs. So I did 50, 100, and 150. He wanted me to do mirror mode, but I'm not doing mirror mode. Nobody plays mirror mode. That's stupid. So I did 50, 100, and 150. I'd say that's beating the game. If you disagree, I don't care. I don't care. You can disagree. That's fine. So that's what I've played for Mario Kart so far. I've done Super Mario Kart, Mario Kart Super Circuit, now Mario Kart 64. The next one in line would be Double Dash. Double Dash is the only Mario Kart game I don't have, or at least don't have access to, right? Because all of the other ones I either have physical copies of, or I have them on Switch Online. And Mario Kart Double Dash, I don't. Mostly because it's like $500 on games. It's not $500. It's like 60 or 70 or something. It's pretty expensive, though, for a Mario Kart game. And I really don't like Mario Kart, so I'm not too bothered about it. So it's pretty expensive, and it's not on Switch Online yet, but it will be soon, I'm assuming. I'm guessing it's going to come next year. It's probably going to be in the second wave of games announced for GameCube. That's my assumption. So I will play that when it drops on Switch Online. But for now, that means I can play Mario Kart DS on the DS. Actually, I probably play it on the 3DS. I can play Mario Kart Wii, probably on the Wii U. And then I can play Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with all the DLC, because I finally have the DLC. Obviously, I'll do that on Switch too. Oh, and I forgot Mario Kart 7 as well. Mario Kart 7 on 3DS as well. So, yeah, the only one that I don't have, can't play, is Double Dash. I'm still waiting on that. So I talked about all the games I beat in the last week, but I did also play quite a bit of another game That game is Yakuza 0 Director's Cut on Switch 2. Now, I played Yakuza 0 for the first time back in January. I had bought it on PS4, Yakuza 0, and I played like 2 hours of it, and I'm like, this is kind of neat. But then I kind of got away from it. I say in January. I think it was actually more like February or March, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I bought it in January, started it in February or March, maybe even March. And then I played it for a little bit, kind of got away from it, and then it was announced in the April presentation for the Switch 2 on April 2nd. And I was like, oh, wait, I should just stop and I should buy it on Switch 2 when it comes out, and then I can play it there. And so that's what I did. Although I guess I was like a month late on Switch 2, which is fine. Yakuza 0 Director's Cut is not something I have to be there day one for, but I'm glad to have it now, and I've been playing it, and I've played almost 9 hours of it so far, and it's great. It's a fantastic game so far. Um, so yeah, Yakuza, you're in a city in Japan. It's an open world. I'm sure many people are familiar with Yakuza, or at least understand the basic idea. But you play as a dude who's in the Yakuza, and then he's not. It's a whole thing. And then apparently there's another dude. So the main guy in the series is Kiryu, as far as I know. I'm not very knowledgeable on Yakuza. So you start the game as him, and then all of a sudden you start playing as this other guy that I didn't realize was in the game. So I'm guessing you kind of go back and forth through the game. I'm in chapter 4 of 17, so I've got quite a ways to go. We'll see what happens. I think, Yakuza, the story is compelling. The fighting, like the action, the combat itself is quite fun. The I think one of the best things about Yakuza are the side quests in the open world. You'll be going towards a main objective, and then all of a sudden you'll see somebody on the street, and you've got to do something for them. And so some of them were great. Like one of the earlier ones I did was with the first guy that you play as. And there was a kid who was like waiting in line to pre-order a video game because this takes place in the early 2000s, like about when it came out, about when the game originally, or about when Kiwami originally came out, I should say. So there's a kid trying to pre-order a video game, and you find them, you talk to them, they're pre-ordering their video game, whatever, right? Later on, you stumble across them again. Once you pass that same area for the second time, no matter when you do it in the game, this happens. And somebody comes up and steals the game from the kid. It's like a high school student. So you go up, talk to the kid, and Kiryu is like assessing the situation. He's like, all right, so some punk high school kid stole it from this little kid. All right. Then he goes, you chase down the high school kid, you beat him up. But then you find out that actually a high school kid got the game stolen by some other dude. I think it was like some sort of like businessman. So then Kiryu's like, okay, so a businessman stole a game from a high school kid who stole a game from the little child. Okay. And then you chase down the businessman. And then after you beat up the businessman, you find out that it was stolen by a Yakuza. So now it's like, okay, there's a Yakuza who stole from a businessman who stole from a high school punk who stole from the little kid. And then you have to go beat up the Yakuza, and then you get the game back for the kid. But it was just the game is just it's ridiculous. It's crazy. It's absurd, and I'm here for it. It's hilarious. It's fun. It's just fun. It's fun. It's a longer game. How long to beat said 33 and a half hours. I think so far I've been moving a little slow, so it might actually end up being more like 40 for me. We'll see what happens. But that's all right. I'm having fun with it. I will definitely be playing it a little bit less tomorrow when Donkey Kong Bonanza comes out. So don't expect that I'm gonna have beat it next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It could be a little while. But I might talk about it again because it's a fun game. It's a good game. So my hope is that since they've put out Yakuza 0 on Switch 2, that they'll go through and put out the other ones. Because Sega's third-party support on the Switch 2 has been quite good, I think. It's only been a month. They put out Sonic, they put out Yakuza, they put out Raidu. That might be it, or maybe there was something else as well. But that's quite a bit just for a month, right? There's the Raidu remaster. Um, so I'm pretty impressed with their support so far. I'm really hoping that Persona 4 Revival, when that comes out, is day and date, and it's on Switch 2 as well. That would be really nice. So we'll see what happens. I'm not gonna place any bets on it, but that would be pretty cool. But yeah, my hope is that Yakuza, they're hoping to put out the whole series, or at least, a bunch of the series on the Switch too. And so next they're going to put out the Kiwami collection. That would be pretty cool. And I hope that happens soon. Like, I hope they kind of roll through these pretty quickly, because I don't want to have to wait another year to get Kiwami 1 and 2. Although I might have to. Um, Or because that's the thing. I'll probably after this game, if we haven't heard about Kiwami 1 and 2 on Switch 2, I'll probably wait a year, even 2 maybe, before I buy it on another console because I'll see I want to see if it actually is going to come to Switch 2 before I go and buy it on another console. Because if I can help it, I'd like to play everything on Switch too. I bought Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 yesterday. So I recorded the earlier part of this podcast on Tuesday. Now I'm recording the rest of it Wednesday morning. So I bought last night Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 on the Switch. I wanted to buy those physically for a couple of years because 7 and 8 came out physically and 9 came out physically. The Final Fantasy 9 physical is super expensive. The 7 and 8 I think is a little less, but it's still like hard to find. So I was like, kind of sucks. I can't find these. I don't really want to spend, $100. And then they dropped digitally. They were like $6 a pop, and I was like, okay, I really don't like digital games, but I think in this instance, I'm saving like $80, and I can actually find them. So I guess I'll do it. I do have Final Fantasy 1 through 6 digitally as well because I have the Pixel Remaster on Steam. So now I've got 1 through 6 on Steam, 7, 8, and 9 on Switch too. So that's currently. Now, I could have bought those games on Steam, but again, if I have a choice, I'd rather play them on Switch or on Switch 2, whatever the case. So, generally speaking, there might be a few instances where I'm like, okay, that game's not going to run well, but with Switch 2, I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty confident now with Switch 2 that most of the third party stuff, at least for a little while, is going to run pretty good. But we'll see. I mean, it all depends on optimization. It depends on how lazy they were when porting the game. So if they were a little lazy, it might work. If they were very lazy, it's not gonna work. So that's kind of where we're at. So, and I mean, it is what it is, right? Yeah, I mean, I think this year, right? So I just was mentioning Sega has had pretty good support for the Switch too. Square Enix so far they've put out Bravely Default, but they're also putting out the Final Fantasy VII remake Intergrade. They're putting out Dragon Quest 1 and 2, um, Final Fantasy Tactics. There's a lot of stuff from Square Enix. So I think Square Enix is single-handedly carrying the Switch, and it's the second half of its launch here. Because I was looking at the Nintendo Today app yesterday, or I guess 2 days ago now, Monday, air yesterday, if you will. I was looking at the Nintendo Today ad. The next thing coming out, Bonanza tomorrow, right? A week from Bonanza, there's the Mario Kart or Mario Kart, Mario Party Jamboree is getting the Switch 2 edition, which I might buy. I'm kind of intrigued, but we'll see what happens. But if so, I'll buy the upgrade pack digitally. I'm not gonna like go buy the game again on Switch 2. I have it on Switch. So that's coming out, and like that's not a big release. Like, who cares? Like, honestly, pretty much nobody cares about the Mario Party Switch 2 edition. And then in August, there's Dragon Drive, which is interesting, but again, it's not really a big deal. It's just a little online thing. I might buy it. We'll see. I don't know. $20 for a digital game. I'm not really thrilled about it. But I might. I might buy it. I'm hoping they do like a free weekend for Dragon Drive, so you can kind of see how it is, and then you can kind of gauge from there if you want to buy it. They've done that in the past with some like Arms and Splatoon and that kind of stuff, so I could see something like that. Like they do the global test fire for Splatoon, they do the something similar for Arms, so I could see something like that happening. And then the only other thing in August was Kirby and the Forgotten Land right at the end of August, and again that's just a Switch 2 edition, which admittedly I'm more interested in, but I don't really love the idea of spending $80 on a Kirby game. I just like Kirby. I've played some of the old Kirby games. They're pretty cool. I also played them not quite for free, but like basically for free through Switch Online. So, I might play some of the Wii ones, some of the DS ones, maybe even the 3DS ones here soon. But I think I want to pass on the Switch ones until they're a little cheaper because I don't want to pay full price for a Kirby game. That's crazy. And I definitely don't need to be there right at the start for Kirby, so I can happily wait a few years and hope it goes down in price. We'll see though. Nintendo games aren't necessarily known for going down in price, so we'll see. But yes, and then that's it. There's absolutely not a thing in September. Nintendo is not putting out a game in September, as that we know of. That we know of. There is not a game in September, which I mean that concerns me. Like I don't understand. So we've had Mario Kart World from Nintendo. We've had Mario Kart World. We're having Donkey Kong Bonanza. We're having, and that's it. New. That's literally it. New because the other stuff's all. It's either a little. I guess the digital only Drag and Drive kind of, if you want to count that. Otherwise, everything's just Switch 2 editions, which I understand they want to put out the Switch 2 editions, but here's the thing, right? Honestly, I think part of the reason why they're putting out the Switch 2 edition is because it worked so well on Switch, right? They could put out these Wii U games, they could put them out again on Switch, and everybody bought them again, right? And that's cool, but the difference was that when the Switch came out, nobody had played those Wii U games, right? But now that the Switch 2 came out, everybody's played those Switch 1 games. Because comparatively, the Wii U sold, what, like 13.5 million. The Switch 1 sold like 145 or 150 or something. I think it's like 150, actually. Something crazy like that. So, it's not even close. It's not even close. So the reason why those Wii U games sold on Switch is because nobody had played them. You can't apply the same logic here because everybody has played the Switch 1 game. Not everybody, but more people, right? Far more people. So there's far less audience for these ports and stuff. So that's cool that they want to do the little updates, and that's nice, but they can't fill in for other releases generally. I mean, maybe every now and then, but you definitely don't want to. It's the opening year, Nintendo. What are you doing, man? What are you doing? So this is why we need the July Direct. We really need a Direct. I'm hoping the week from today or tomorrow. So either the 23rd or the 24th is my guess. That's my guess if they're doing one. I really hope they're doing one because man, I really don't want to. This is quiet. It's like I've said before. The oven's been closed for a few years now. They finally open it up. We get to see what they're baking, and it was nothing. It was nothing. There's nothing there. There's nothing in the oven. Both of these games, both Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Kart World, we've now heard that they were originally Switch 1 games. And so that means that they spent years, presumably, years and years working on these games, having troubles with the old hardware, and they've kind of just been sitting and waiting for the Switch 2 to come out, which is cool, right? Because I mean, now we get the games actually working well. But that means that, like, this was like literally they've just been sitting on these games. So where are the games that are new? Where are the games that they were working on a couple years ago? Because these games have been done, probably, or at least pretty close to done. So I'm just concerned. Like, I'm concerned about, like, where is the stuff? So that's why we need a July Direct. It'd also be nice to get a September Direct as like a Mario 40th thing. I imagine we'll probably get something. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm pretty concerned. We need a summer Direct. And I'm thinking hopefully they're just waiting for Donkey Kong Bonanza. They don't want to interfere with that, and they're going to do it next week after Bonanza. I'm sure the Mario Party Jamboree Switch 2 edition isn't a big enough deal to postpone a Direct over. But if it is, then maybe they could do it on like the 30th, the 31st, whatever it is. They could maybe do it right at the tail end or right at the beginning of the month, maybe in August. Whatever the case, we really need a Direct. Probably two, because we need one in September as well. But that's not for a little while, so that's okay. But yeah, we really we need some announcements here. This is pretty rough. All right, so I guess that's going to do it here for the opening segment. Let's take a little music break and we'll come back and talk about some news about video games and cool stuff like that. See you all in a moment. Welcome back. So our first thing today, so I guess the Switch 2 got an update. I experienced this firsthand. I tried to open Yakuza yesterday, and there was an update, and I was like, oh boy. Now it's not anything substantial. I was looking around the menus, like maybe there's something here that's like different, but no, it's really not anything. I guess it fixed a couple issues. There was an issue where some people were having their parental control settings not transferred accurately from the Switch 1. And I guess that's been fixed. There was an issue where sometimes it wouldn't connect to internet in the system settings. It would say searching for networks. And then also general system stability improvements to enhance the user experience, which is like the least specific thing I've ever heard. But that's how patch notes go, I suppose. So I don't know what the update was about. I don't think Nintendo knows what the update was about. Who knows? Who cares? Whatever. But I guess it's interesting that they're rolling out one of the first big updates here. I say big. Again, it wasn't big, but it was one of the first updates console-wide. So that's kind of interesting. Oh, so speaking on my July situation, my thinking there's a Direct in July. Nate the Hate, obviously Nate the Hate gets a lot of attention. He always is talking about it. He's I feel like he's been mostly accurate, right? I believe that's feel like that's been mostly accurate. But he also has gotten some criticism. I guess now he's saying that there is a direct slated for this month. He says it is the $1 million question. I've been told there is a direct this month, the month of July, but that direct will not take place until after Donkey Kong Bonanza releases, which is what I agree. I'm pretty sure that's what's holding it up to. Beyond that, I have no additional information. I do not have information as to the exact timing at this point, which makes sense. But that said, it launches on the 17th, Bonanza, so, that doesn't leave us a whole lot of July left. So you would think it would be pretty quickly. Also, there's a Pokemon Presents on the 22nd, which I'm guessing is probably just going to be talking about Pokemon Legends ZA is probably pretty much all that's talking about. So that's cool, but I'm a little I'm thinking like could when could that happen? When could the direct happen? Because the 22nd is a Tuesday. So I could see it being like the 23rd or the 24th still. I don't know if they do it back to back days, but like the 24th, because I guess there's a earners meeting or something. There's like a yeah, earners meeting or whatever on the 1st. So I think they would wanna before they release that on the 1st, I think they would want to do a direct. I think that would be a good time. So, I mean, I guess it's possible they do an early August direct, but honestly, I think a late July direct is more likely. Which, in that case, I mean, we're talking here next week we could have a direct. So, here's what I'm gonna say as far as a direct. I really hope there's a direct next week. If there is, I'm gonna hope to live stream it. That's my plan. And if I can, I'm hoping to make a bonus episode of the podcast for the direct. But if it happens on like a Tuesday, like if it happens the same day as the Pokemon Presents, then I'll just put it in the regular podcast episode. I doubt that'll happen though. If it happens on Wednesday, then we'll see. I'm guessing it'll probably be its own episode, and I'll probably put out 2 episodes on Wednesday. One about the direct, one about just the regular show. If it's on Thursday, then there'll definitely be a bonus episode Thursday, maybe Friday. And so that's my plan. I think there will be a bonus episode again, unless it happens on Tuesday, in which case, I could just put it in the regular episode, and that's fine. We'll just have a longer episode. But yes, that's the plan. Hoping to do a bonus episode if that happens. I'm really hoping that does happen because man, we need some games. We need some games. It's rough. It's a rough situation out here. So that's kind of where we're at. Nate the Hate. I don't really follow leakers too much. But I've heard of him. So if he thinks there's a direct this month. I like that idea, so we'll see. We'll see. Supposedly, Square Enix is prepping a remake of Dragon Quest VII, according to GameSpot, which is cool. Dragon Quest VII, it's definitely one that could be remade. So, Dragon Quest III, the HD 2D remake, the producer, Masaki Hayasaka, if that's how you say that might be how you say that. Who knows? He said earlier this year, this is according to GameSpot, that he would love to tackle Final Fantasy VI next. Which, by the way, Final Fantasy VI Remake, I'm down. Let's do it. Hayasaki made it clear it was just his personal preference, while not also noting that the beloved RPG was a major reference point for Octopath Traveler, the first HD 2D game. This wouldn't be the first time Square Enix has updated Dragon Quest VII either, says GameSpot. They did one on the 3DS. Yep. Alright, so we get the idea. But I guess the point is, so supposedly there is a remake for Dragon Quest VII. That's cool and all, but I'm kind of a little confused because, like, if we had Dragon Quest III, if we're getting Dragon Quest 1 and 2, wouldn't the assumption be that they'd remake, like, 4, 5, 6, right? I mean, like, because there's a whole trilogy there. So I don't know much about Dragon Quest. But I know that there's, like, one trilogy involving one hero, and that is 3, 1, 2. That's the order of those. And then there's another trilogy, which is 4, 5, 6. And that's like a whole nother story, self-contained. 7, I assume, is part of another trilogy of some sort. But are they really going to skip that full 3 games there and remake 7? I mean, I guess they could, right? There's nothing stopping them, but it seems a little strange. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I'd like, personally, if they were all remade, other than, like, I think it's 10, that's the MMO, so we don't need that one. But otherwise, maybe it's 9, whatever it is. There's one that, there's an MMO. So, I could see that one not getting remade. But otherwise, I think we should have the whole series remade up until, like, 11S, because 11S is on current platforms and stuff. So, because that way I could play all the games. That would be great. I'd love to play all the way through Dragon Quest. But we'll see what happens. I read this the other day. I don't know all the details. I'm not sure how this happens, but I guess there was a listing for the copyright of a Donkey Kong movie from the Mario team or like the Mario movie guys, the Nintendo Pictures and Universal LLC. Again, I don't know. I don't know how that happens. I can't actually find the article anymore. I found it, but it like won't load properly. I don't know if the article got taken down or what. But whatever the case, I guess there was some sort of listing for a Donkey Kong movie. I guess I don't know if that means for sure that it's happening. Like I could see maybe a world where it doesn't happen, but I think the idea is that it probably is happening, a Donkey Kong movie. Which, by the way, I've been thinking there's going to be a Donkey Kong movie for a while. That does make sense, especially now with the with Bonanza coming out. I'm gonna assume that when this movie's gonna come out, probably like 2028 is my guess, right? I mean, give them a couple years. They don't want to put it out the same year as Zelda. I guess they could, right? They could put it out next year, 2027, or 2 years from now. Sorry, 2027. I guess actually, yeah, they could put it out 2027 because there's April 2026 is Mario 2, um, and then like March 2027 or something like that is Zelda, or maybe I think it's May now. I guess yeah, maybe they could put it out 2027, late 2027, or they could put it out early 2028. Whatever the case, I'm gonna guess early 2028. But yeah, whatever the case, we could see a Donkey Kong movie in a few years. That's cool, but we'll talk about it in a few years because it's not really too relevant right now. But I am happy that Nintendo's branching out and they're making more movies and stuff. This Nintendo Pictures project seems to be going pretty well. I'm hoping like a Luigi's Mansion movie we could get out of this. Maybe we could get like more properties, right? I don't know, like a Metroid, or like I don't know if Metroid would be popular enough to warrant a movie. I don't really know, but I'm definitely excited about that. I guess the director of Final Fantasy says he's not sure when or if the mainline series will return to turn-based combat. I'm gonna say right now, I don't think the game will ever return to turn-based combat. But I guess somebody asked him, and he said it wasn't a clear-cut answer as to whether or not it'll ever go back. I'm assuming they're not planning to ever go back to turn-based combat with Final Fantasy, but I'm guessing they're just not ruling it out because of the potential possibility that they could do something like that. Ghost of Yotoi. It's getting the limited edition PS5. It actually looks amazing. If you haven't seen the Ghost of Yotoi PS5, you need to look it up. It's great. There's like two options. There's one that's like a black mountain, and one that's like a gold mountain. I never actually watched the Ghost of Yotoi State of Play because I don't know. I just like I was like maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should play Tsushima before I look into Yotoi. So I didn't watch it, but I did see this new limited edition PS5. It looks awesome. You guys should see pictures of it if you haven't, because it's a really cool looking PS5. They do pretty good special editions. I'll give them that. So there's some of the special editions are pretty good. A lot of the PS4 ones were pretty good. All right, this is reported by GameSpot. In an interview with IGN, Donkey Kong Bonanza producer Kenta Motakura explained that Nintendo executive Yoshiaka Koizumi, oh my gosh, I can't say his name, Koizumi. I know Koizumi, okay? Approached the team and asked them to think about making it into 3D Donkey Kong. The team then discussed the possibility with Shigeru Miyamoto, who created both the Donkey Kong and Mario series, yada yada. He explained that, emphasized that Kong has unique actions like the hand slap featured in Smash Bros. Koikumi, to directed Jungle Beat, added that Donkey Kong has long and strong arms, much in contrast to Mario's more modest figure. So I guess the point here is that the 3D Mario team specifically wanted to make a Donkey Kong game, and I guess they had to go talk to Miyamoto about it, and Miyamoto's like, sure, but you've got to know the Donkey Kong's not the same character, right? you've got you've got to remember he's a different guy. So I don't know, but yeah, I guess apparently I'm assuming they were probably planning on making a 3D Mario, and maybe they ran out of ideas, or they wanted to take a different route this time, so they're making Bonanza instead. So I just thought that was an interesting idea. So Sony Santa Monica, they make the God of War games. They made both God of War and God of War Ragnarok. And I guess the director is Cory Barlog. He said the next game in development is the next big thing, and the progress is going well. There's nothing known about it, but a lot of people are theorizing that it's a new IP. The reporter that interviewed Barlog said that that's not true. He says it's not a new IP, but it might feel like one. Maybe that's why people are confused. So I guess supposedly they're using a pre-existing IP, but it's there's something different about it. I guess it might be more sci-fi. People are saying. So I guess Sony Santa Monica, they're doing something different, something new, but kind of also not new. I guess in 2021, people were reporting that they might be developing an open world sci-fi IP. So I guess that's why they think that there could be a sci-fi game. Oh, that's interesting. I originally pulled up this article because Fork Knife was offline. But I guess now it's been updated. Fork Knife is back online. Of course, if you don't know, I call Fortnite Fork Knife because I hate it. Um, yeah, Fork Knife is back online after being down for several hours. I guess they did some new update and it accidentally shut it down, or maybe they intentionally shut it down. I don't really know all the details, but I guess it got shut down. I don't think it's been shut down before, right? I think this is the first time, but I guess for a few hours or several hours, it was shut down. I'm sure that ended a lot of people's worlds. Uh, how could they ever? How could they ever recover from this? All right, so there was the Ask the Developer Q&A for Donkey Kong Bonanza. I guess they said in a long-running series, novelty and continuity are both important. We wanted this title to fully convey the appeal of Donkey Kong as a character, Motokura said. Meanwhile, we thought that by creating something new, leveraging our experience developing 3D Mario games, we'd have the opportunity to create two separate branches, 2D Donkey Kong and 3D Donkey Kong, just as we did with the Mario games. I can't read for some reason, but this is according to IGN. So I guess the idea here is that Donkey Kong Bonanza is sort of a different branch from the Donkey Kong Country series. I guess they can't get Retro Studios to make another Donkey Kong game because they've been busy for like 12 years. So so now they're having the 3D Mario team do it instead. So I guess they're planning to. This sounds to me like they're planning to continue with 3D Donkey Kong, in which case we could get more of these games in the future, which does concern me a little bit because they'll probably be made by the 3D Mario team again, and then we'll just be rotating. Like every 8 years we get a game. One of them is Donkey Kong, one of them is Mario. Unless they just have a bigger team and they can get one of each out per generation. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but it definitely does concern me because I don't like the idea that the 3D Mario team is distracted. Like I don't love that idea. But we'll see. We'll see how it works out. But yeah, so supposedly Donkey Kong Bonanza, the 3D Donkey Kong stuff is going to be something that continues to happen. All right, so I've got to give Xbox some credit here. This month for Game Pass, they're adding High on Life, RoboCop Rogue City, My Friendly Neighborhood, Back to the Dawn, Abiotic Factor, Wheel World, Wu Chang Fallen Feathers, Grounded 2, and Farming Simulator 25. So they're adding all those games, and they're only removing Gigantic, Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess, and Turnip Boy Robs a Bank. Um, so this is actually the first month I've seen in quite a while that Game Pass is introducing more games than they're taking away. So I've got to give them some credit there. Uh, I know I don't. I only pulled that up so I could give Xbox some credit because I'm usually not the guy to do that. But I figured this time I could do something like that. Supposedly, Donkey Kong Bonanza came about because the 3D Mario team experimented with putting arms on a Goomba. I guess this is inspired by Knuckle from Super Mario Odyssey. He's like the blue guy in the desert, um, with the big hands. And I guess they put his hands on a Goomba to kind of get as part of this original destruction simulator idea. And then later on, they were like, you know what? Who else can we throw in here? So they put in Donkey Kong. I always love Nintendo. They come up with gameplay ideas before they've got the story and the game behind it. There's a famous story. Splatoon started with a bunch of tofu blocks before they came up with all the squids and stuff. Like there's a lot of these examples. Donkey Kong Bonanza started with a Goomba with arms. Personally, I'd like to see that original game. I want to see the Goomba with the arms. But anyways, I just another example of Nintendo in their innovation in gameplay and how they are focused more on the gameplay than the story and all the other stuff behind it. So I always appreciate that and I always respect that. Supposedly, also in Bonanza, thanks to the game's destruction, you can skip large locations and parts of the story. So I'm sure that'll be very fun for the speedrunners and stuff. Personally, I'm not planning to do any skipping, but I think that's kind of interesting. Interesting thing though, Takahashi said there's a lot of leeway in terms of progression in this game. For example, locations or parts of the story you can skip without suffering any consequences. When the game progresses in a way we hadn't intended, we call it a sequence break in development terminology. Typically, in game development, restrictions are put in place to prevent this from happening, but since the game is all about destruction, we wanted people to play freely. So I find that really interesting that they're allowing sequence breaks and they're not doing anything to stop it. Because normally, especially Nintendo, you expect them to be the company to kind of like hold you back and be like, "Hey, buddy, let's play the game the way we want to play the game." I mean, there was the whole thing. A bunch of people freaked out back when Tears of the Kingdom came out. There was a way to get infinite rupees, and they quickly patched it. They didn't want anybody playing the game the wrong way. And Nintendo's been known for that. They've done a lot of those things. I'm always supportive of Nintendo, but that is one thing that I'm like, okay, that's a little weird sometimes. That they don't want people to break their games. They want them to play them the correct way. And so I find it really interesting now that they're kind of taking a step back with Bonanza specifically. They're like, you know what? You can do whatever you want. It's disruption based. So I find that cool, and I guess that's kind of neat. I guess maybe they could also maybe they were just a little lazy with the bug fixes. I don't know. No, I bet they probably did. Where they're like, hey, you know what? It's fine. They can skip stuff. That's the whole point here. You destroy through some things. You just skip some stuff. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting that they're Nintendo's loosening up a little bit on some of that stuff. So they've been loosening up on a lot of their old practices, and I'm not sure that's always a good thing, but sometimes it's a good thing. The Nintendo Switch game vouchers. They've been doing those for a little while. Obviously, on Switch, prices were pretty standard. It was almost always $60 for a game on Switch. And you could buy game vouchers instead. So you could go on, if you had Nintendo Switch Online, you could buy two game vouchers for $100. And then you could redeem them and get two games. So basically, you were paying $50 for a $60 game two times. However, that service is now being removed. I guess it's no longer going to be a thing as of January 30th, 2026. So you've got a little bit of time before you have to do that, or yeah, before you can't use them anymore. So if you still want to take advantage of some game vouchers, go ahead and do it real fast before they're gone. But yes, I guess game voucher stuff is going away. I'm not really entirely sure why they would do that. I guess probably because the prices are so variable now, right? Like if the game vouchers were going to stay $100, right? Then you could get like Mario Kart World and Bonanza and save $50. Or you could get like Bravely Default and Yakuza and then you paid $10 more than you had to, right? So it's just because I think because prices are so much more variable on Switch 2 so far, I think that's why they're doing this game voucher. I think that's why game vouchers are going away. And I don't think that's really a big deal. I'm sure there's probably some people that are upset about it because there's probably a lot of people that do use the game vouchers regularly. But yeah, I'm guessing that's why they're doing it. So King, they make a bunch of mobile games. They used to make a bunch of bubble shooters and stuff. Um, King Activision Blizzard bought King, or maybe they merged with King, whatever the case. So there was Activision Blizzard King was a company, and then Microsoft bought them. So it was like Microsoft, Activision Blizzard King. I guess if you want to keep adding to it. But yeah, so King is now in the Microsoft wheelhouse. I guess in the most recent round of layoffs, a bunch of King staff was laid off, and they were replaced by AI tools that they helped to train. What an apocalypse we live in. So Microsoft, I gave Microsoft a little credit earlier. I've got to take some of that away now. So apparently, and this is all speculative. I don't think we don't know for sure that it's true. But there's some pretty good evidence to back it up, I guess. So people at King were laid off and replaced by AI tools that they helped to train. Uh, I don't think I need to go into tons of detail there to explain why that's ridiculous, but that is pretty ridiculous. And if I was somebody who worked at King, I guess I wouldn't be anymore. I would be pretty upset. I would be pretty upset. So yeah, I guess we'll just move on from that. That's my weekly thing this time to complain about Xbox. So there was a BBC breakfast special thing. I don't live in the UK, so I don't typically watch these. But I watched this one. They did a one on retro gaming, and they brought in a bunch of people that were like supposedly experts in retro gaming. They didn't bring in me, so I'm a little disappointed. Um, but yeah, they brought a bunch of people in. They were talking about all the benefits and all the great things about retro gaming and all this stuff. And they toted out some of the old consoles and stuff. So they, oh man, they brought out a Super Nintendo and they brought out a Wii, and in the Super Nintendo, they put an NES game. If you haven't seen this, I recommend you watch through the BBC Breakfast Special. It's like 9 minutes or something, or just skip to the photo. But yes, there is now a famous photo. It's suddenly become famous. I saw everybody talk about it on Blue Sky. with a Super Mario Brothers cartridge shoved in a Super Nintendo on BBC. So yeah, it makes you wonder if these experts really know what they're talking about. Donkey Kong Bonanza, we got to see how the game originally looked on Switch 1. So that was kind of interesting. We get to see a couple side by side screenshots of the Switch 1 versus the Switch 2 and how it looks different. And it does look much better. I'm assuming the primary reason for why they had to move development from the Switch 1 is probably mostly because of performance stuff rather than graphical stuff. But I guess it is still kind of interesting that they have it was originally a Switch 1 game. Now it's been moved to Switch 2. We've had a couple examples of that, like Mario Kart World, so I think that's kind of interesting. And that could be part of why we've had such a quiet last couple of years, because they were making a bunch of games, but none of them would work very well, so they had to just hold them. And they're like, all right, fine, we'll just hold them for Switch 2. So I think that's kind of what happened here. And that's why we haven't had a Splatoon. That's why we haven't had a Donkey Kong. That's why we haven't had a Metroid Prime. This might be why we haven't had a Mario Kart, all these things. Probably because the Switch 1 was so underpowered that they needed a new console. That's my assumption. But yes, looking at the Switch 1 versus the Switch 2 screenshot of Donkey Kong, um, the game, it looks a lot crisper on the Switch 2. There's a lot more details in the grass on Switch 2. There's more details on the trees in Switch 2. There's the HDR has some like light ray tracing on the Switch 2. There's a lot of stuff that much improved on the Switch 2. So I think that's it's definitely nice to know that, because sometimes, especially with PlayStation and Xbox, sometimes they'll put out a game and it's like, do they really need the new hardware to do this? You know what I mean? Like they could put this out on the last one. And so I think it's really cool to see a game like Donkey Kong Bonanza, and you look at it on Switch 1, you're like, okay, yep, no, I see why they might have needed the Switch 2. It seems like it was actually a necessary jump, which is always nice to see, because it sometimes it can get a little annoying. Sometimes it's like, really, did we really need that? No, we didn't. In this instance, I think we did. According to PC Gamer, Meta is expanding its AI capabilities so quickly it's housing data centers in tents. Apparently, yeah, there are some places where some of their AI infrastructure and their data centers are being housed in tents. So I guess that tells you, they're expanding AI too quickly. I just thought it was a funny story. Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D remake. I talked about this earlier. I guess it's going to be on Switch 1 and on Switch 2, but there's not going to be any sort of upgrade path from the Switch 1 version to the Switch 2 version. We've seen that a few times now, like with Sonic X Shadow Generations. You could buy it on Switch 1, you could buy it on Switch 2, but there was no upgrade between the two. I think we're going to have to expect that from a lot of the third-party stuff. They're probably not going to have upgrades for a lot of the Switch 1 games to Switch 2 for the third party stuff. I think it's mostly just going to be Nintendo. There might be a few other situations, like we saw No Man's Sky had a free upgrade pack, but it seems like a lot of them are going to have no upgrade pack at all, or upgrade path at all. Kotaku claims that getting Donkey Kong Bonanza to run at 60 frames was important for Nintendo, according to this developer interview. That makes sense. 3D Mario games are always expected to run at 60 frames, and so it makes there's no reason why Donkey Kong would get any different treatment. It makes sense that they would do that. The 3D All Star Mario 3D All Stars got a free update, a little update to, I guess, patch out some bug fixes, supposedly make things run a little smoother. I guess there's a couple things that on Switch 2, a couple Switch 1 games on Switch 2 that don't run super well. Apparently, Super Mario Galaxy in the 3D All Stars collection didn't run super well, so they fixed that. And then I heard F-Zero 99 also doesn't run super well on Switch 2, and I don't think they fixed that one quite yet. But yeah, so I guess they fixed the 3D All Stars collection mostly just so Galaxy would run a little better. I guess the funny thing about this is that you literally can't buy the game anymore, and they bothered updating it for Switch 2. So some people are kind of mad about that. They're like, why would you even do that? You can't even buy the game. I think it's still kind of nice that it's interesting. I like that they still recognized that, there are people that play the game on Switch, the people that bought it originally, and they're like, you know what, we'll still throw these people a bone. I think it's actually a good thing that they still did it. But I can't admit that it is quite funny that they upgraded a game that you can't even buy anymore. So I guess that was all I had for news today. I know I ran through some of those last ones pretty quickly, but I felt like we were getting a lot of the same information, and also I'm just like losing it. Like my tongue and my lips are not working together. I'm talking weird and I'm reading weird, and it's a mess. So, I need to probably call it good here. So I guess real quick, I'll kind of talk about, in the next week or so, I'm going to be playing a lot of Bonanza tomorrow. Part of me is like, I should do a whole special on Bonanza, but no, I'm just going to make it the next episode. Next episode will be all about Bonanza. I'll have had like 6 days to play. I know I'm a little busy tomorrow, but I should be able to pick it up, play it a little bit, and then play it at night. But I'll have like 5 good days, I think, to play it before the next podcast episode. So next podcast episode, we're gonna be talking all about Bonanza. I probably won't have like beat it or anything, but I'll probably have played quite a bit of it. So that's my assumption. So that'll be fun. So I don't know, maybe next episode will be a little longer. I'm hoping, it'd be really nice if there was also word about a Nintendo Direct by next week, but I'm not gonna bet on it. So I guess that's gonna be good. So you can email the show at notjustnintendo@gmail.com. That is NOTJUSTNINTENDO@gmail.com. You can also leave a comment on YouTube or on Spotify if you're watching there. You don't even have to email. You can also join the community Discord down below. You can follow me on Blue Sky for updates about games when I beat them. Obviously, I talk about them here too, but you get some different insight on Blue Sky. I need to catch up on all the ones that I've missed in the last couple months because I was gone from Blue Sky for a little while. I'm going to be working on some videos. Hopefully, I can get that Minecraft video out this week. If I do, I'll post it in the Discord, and I'll post it on my community tab because it's on a different channel, so I don't want anybody to miss it because they can't find it. And I guess the other thing I'll promote, you can watch my top 50 video here on YouTube, or on this podcast feed. So I put the audio version of the top 50 in the podcast feed, or you can watch the video version on YouTube. The only difference is, again, the one has audio, the one doesn't. Or the one has video, the one doesn't. They both have audio. You couldn't listen to anything if there's no audio. And then the other difference is the podcast version has a different opening and a different closing. So I've wrapped them up a little differently, but otherwise it's the same video. You can watch either version. There's the video version on YouTube, and then the podcast version is both on YouTube and on Spotify and Amazon. So you can watch all that. I would be very appreciative. I think that was a great video. It is a little long, but I mean, if you're if you're listening to the podcast, I don't think it's a huge deal for a longer episode. So thanks again, everybody, for watching. I'm super hyped to tell Donkey Kong Bonanza tomorrow. Tomorrow is the day. With all that said, thank you all for listening to this week's episode of Not Just Nintendo. Goodbye.